It is never too late to reinvent yourself or to do something that brings you joy or to follow a passion. I think it's really important to be genuine, right? And you'll hear a lot of people talking about authenticity and people will roll their eyes at it. But I really think it's about being genuine. Don't underestimate the power of small joys.
Welcome to the 1 Million Years of Joy podcast. I'm Dr. Andrea Menaker, your host, and my intention is to inspire you to find more joy in your life through the stories from our guests and the science on joy and purpose. Melissa, welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. Since we've connected on LinkedIn, I've been joyfully looking at your posts, and it's just been a real pleasure to see how you're navigating this arena. And I really want to share with our audience, before we dive into some of the questions, how your journey has been really very inspiring. Since COVID, when you lost your job and you really reinvented yourself over the last couple of years, you're now a LinkedIn top voice, you have your own consulting firm, and you're also the co-author of the book called Your Career Resilience Blueprint. And I was wondering if we can start with one question, and that is primarily focused on what have been some of the most profound lessons you have learned from your journey over the last 4 years.
Oh, that's a really good question. I feel like we could take the whole time just answering that one. I think a big one, and one that I really want anyone listening to understand and to take to heart, is it is never too late to reinvent yourself or to do something that brings you joy or to follow a passion, right? I worked in the fashion industry for over 30 years, and that is what I always wanted to do. I remember the day that someone came to my high school and talked about a school for fashion careers, and it was this like light bulb moment of, oh, that's a thing. I can do that. Because for me it was just fun, right? I loved fashion magazines and helping my friends put together outfits, and it never really clicked with me that there were a whole bunch of careers that were associated with that. But that's also then, after so many years in the industry, it's kind of what I thought was the only thing I would ever be good at, right? It was the only thing I knew how to do. And so really completely reinventing myself after the age of 50 was not something that I had anticipated, but it has been an incredible experience. It's been a wonderful journey. I wouldn't change anything. And I think it's a really important lesson. You can reinvent yourself and you can change paths at any time.
So, can you share with us actually what that process was all about for you? Because I imagine you went through this moment of shock and questioning that led you ultimately to your reinvention. Can you help us better understand your journey so we can potentially inspire some of our listeners so they can more easily reinvent themselves?
So I was working at my dream company. I was with Ralph Lauren. I was there for over 11 years. And honestly, probably where I would have retired, because I think it's one of the best American fashion brands, right? And then in 2020, I lost my job. I was living where I still am in New York City in the middle of the COVID pandemic. It was absolutely the epicenter here. And so it was a really tough time, right? It was a lot of lockdowns, a lot of isolation, a lot of unknowns, right? We didn't know so much about the virus and how it was spread and what was safe and what wasn't. And the first thing I thought was, wow, I'm going to need to get a job, right? I'm going to need to get another job. And that was not something that I had had to think about for a really long time. One, I'd been with Ralph for over 11 years. And two, pretty much all of the roles I've ever had in my career were through referrals, were through word of mouth, were through somebody making an introduction. I never was going to a recruiter and asking for help. And so realizing that the fashion industry was really being hit hard by the pandemic, right? Because nobody was buying clothes. Nobody needed to buy clothes. You weren't going anywhere. I said, okay, well, I better go look at LinkedIn, right? Because that's where you go when you need a job. And I joined LinkedIn in 2008. I had to go back and look and see what year I joined, 2008. And so here it was 12 years later. I had never made a post on LinkedIn. I had never made a real comment on LinkedIn. All I had ever done was accepted the occasional connection request. And the most interesting thing to me was that it wasn't the LinkedIn that I remembered from 2008. It was this very interesting and engaging place. It was very vibrant. There was a lot of conversation. It was still very professional. It felt much different than like a Twitter or an Instagram. It was definitely still LinkedIn, but a much, much different variety. And, as far as the emotions I was feeling, I've heard people say that losing a job is sort of like a death. And I think that that's very true. And you go through all of those emotions, right? You go through shock, you go through denial, you go through anger, you go through depression, all those things, right? And for me, what was really interesting was I didn't understand how much of my own identity, self identity, and self worth was tied up in that job, right? Until it wasn't there anymore. And I really felt like I didn't have a voice anymore. And I never expected LinkedIn to be the place that gave me my voice back, but it really did. I remember the first post that I made. I still remember it. I actually went back and looked at it a year or so ago, and it was terrible. It was a terrible post. It was reposting an article from Women's Wear Daily, which is the fashion trade paper. So first of all, not a wide appeal necessarily, but the bigger issue is that it was paywalled, right? So nobody could even read it unless they happened to have a subscription. And I was nauseous when I posted it. I felt so vulnerable and so like I was putting myself out there in a really scary way. But the reaction was positive, right? Even what I would consider a pretty bad post, I got some reactions and nobody was mean to me. And that gave me the self confidence to post again and to post again and to start engaging on other people's posts. And I fell in love with the platform. I really did. It became a place that I looked forward to spending time every day for networking, for job search opportunities, but above all, for this real sense of community there. And that was a huge surprise to me.
So, Melissa, today, from that first post that you made years ago, today you're a long LinkedIn top voice. What practices did you actually put in place to actually get that badge?
So nobody knows why anyone gets LinkedIn Top Voice badge, right? It's selected by LinkedIn editors. I believe it's a huge honor. I was so thrilled when I got it. And fun fact, I almost missed the email that I had gotten it because I get a lot of emails from LinkedIn, right? You get emails for various things when various activities happen. And I was sincerely in my inbox cleaning them out and I almost deleted it. And then I said, wait, what does that say? So it was very funny, but a huge honor and one that I take seriously. How I crafted my brand on LinkedIn, I think it's really important to be genuine, right? And you'll hear a lot of people talking about authenticity and people will roll their eyes at it. But I really think it's about being genuine. And, I see a lot of people on LinkedIn who are just trying to emulate someone else, right? They see that someone else had success on the platform. And so they try doing all the things that they did. That's exhausting. You can't keep that up, right? If you try to have someone else's voice, if you try to have someone else's persona, if you try to write your posts exactly the same way that somebody else does, first of all, it's exhausting. But second of all, when somebody meets you then in real life, whether that's for a job interview or because they want to hire you and become your client, or it's just over a coffee or whatever may transpire, if there's a huge disconnect between how you show up in person versus how you show up on the platform, that's a huge red flag for me. So for me, it was leveraging what I'm good at. And I'm really good at connecting people. I'm really good at bringing people together and I'm good at it because I love it. I really, truly enjoy it. So I had a coffee chat with someone yesterday, right? Someone who I had never spoken with before. we interacted on the platform a little bit and decided let's, take it to the next level, right? Have a virtual coffee. And as he was talking about a project that he's invested in, and it was a little bit out there, right? Not the most common kind of project. And I said, oh, I know someone in that space. I'm going to connect you guys. I think you'd have a lot to talk about. And he started laughing and he said, I could see it on your face. I could see the light bulb go off and I could see that you were thinking about something. And I said, absolutely. I love to bring people together. I love to form relationships for people where business might come out of it, referrals might come out of it, or just a really cool friendship might come out of it. And I think that's really the beautiful part of LinkedIn is that's really the heart of it. It's the people. So for me, being a connector, being a community builder was super important. For me, also just integrity, right? Integrity, doing things the right way, not being in these massive, what's the word I'm looking for? These groups where they'll amplify your content with 1,000 bot comments. I have no patience for that stuff, right? And those aren't real. I have so many people that ask me about those and, well, why does this person get 1,000 likes on their post in an hour? Well, think about it. Why do you think they get 1,000 likes on their post in an hour? If it's automated and it's not genuine interaction, it's really not serving you. And so those were things that were really important to me in my brand, in building my brand. And I spoke a lot at first about the things in the fashion industry that really mattered to me, a big one being sustainability, which is something that I'm still super passionate about and I still talk about. So it's really talking about the things that matter to you, that resonate with you, and that you want to be known for.
Through your post, what I'm seeing is a lot of joy, a lot of generosity, because often you even highlight meetings you've had, discussions you've had, or posts that you've seen through the week that really resonated for you, which I really find, as I said, is a very strong gesture of generosity. And it's just so beautiful. And going back through your own evolution, as you were mentioning, talking about the fashion, that really was something that was very passionate for you, to being authentic. Some individuals believe that we have to choose almost like this box and that we have to be perceived as an expert in a specific domain or in a specific area. I was curious to get your views on that.
I think it's a two-sided coin. I think for sure you should talk about what you know, right? And you should talk about what brings you joy. And I think especially if you're in a job search, right? Then it's really important to talk about the things that you know because you want to be viewed as a subject matter expert when people are looking to hire you. I think we can't be all things to all people. And so sometimes I'll see people talking about something and I think it's a little odd, right? I'll be like, well, that doesn't really resonate with me as far as that particular person's persona. On the flip side, if you have a passion, you don't have to be a subject matter expert to talk about it, right? Is it something that brings you happiness? Is it something you want to learn more about? And it could literally be a post. I just started learning about this topic. I would love to hear from people on the platform who are experts. I think that's LinkedIn. I say this all the time. LinkedIn is the world's greatest free education. And if you ask a question, if you tell people you want to learn more about a topic, you will have so many people that will reach out and want to educate you and want to share the things that they themselves know. So I do think talk about the things you know, but I agree with you. We don't have to put ourselves in this little box of I only talk about this one thing, right? Because we're people and we're multifaceted. And I don't think anyone is only interested in solely one topic. And if they are, I would very gently encourage them to look for a few more. That's what makes us interesting, and that's what makes life interesting. So absolutely, I don't believe in putting people in boxes.
Have you explored other platforms, or has your focus been exclusively on LinkedIn?
My focus has been 99% on LinkedIn. I joined Instagram about 2 months ago, and it's fine. It's a nice platform. I don't get the sense of community out of it that I get out of LinkedIn, right? There's very little. So if you ever look at one of my posts on LinkedIn, you'll see that I have conversations with people because someone will comment on my post and I will respond. And oftentimes a second or a third or a fourth person will join that conversation and we'll literally be having a conversation in the comments, which is one of the best things about the platform. I don't see that happening on Instagram. Maybe somebody makes a comment and then usually a whole bunch of people will pile onto that comment, often in a negative way, which is something that I love about LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a very positive platform. It is 98, 99% a positive platform. And I think that that's because we post under our own names, right? So if you know that your boss can see what you post or your clients can see what you post, you're probably going to think twice before you say something that's really negative or really nasty because it's under your own name. Whereas on a lot of other platforms, you're hiding behind the screen name and nobody really knows who's saying these things. So Instagram is okay. It's definitely not a sense of community. And I find it a little beautified, for lack of a better term, right? It's like the perfectly posed pictures with the filters, and it's the influencer, taking that perfect selfie on the mountaintop. It's not so much as much reality. Twitter and X is definitely not my thing. I checked it out for about 5 minutes and said, nope, absolutely not. The name of your podcast is 1 Million Years of Joy, and I love joy, and I don't feel a lot of joy on Twitter, to be honest. I really don't. So it is really LinkedIn for me.
Great. And when we're looking just at social media in general, and particularly the effort that it takes to post and engage, sometimes it can appear as if it's overwhelming, especially as you're juggling different priorities personally and professionally. How do you maintain boundaries on LinkedIn to ensure it remains a source of joy for you rather than a source of stress?
Oh, it's such a good question. Yeah, you have to set boundaries. And I would say start out small and grow from there. The mistake I see some people make is they get all excited about it because it's a great platform. And so they'll post, 4 times a week, 5 times a week, 6 times a week for like 3 weeks. And then they just feel overwhelmed. And so they leave, right? They don't do anything for a month. And then they come back because they realize that there's a lot of benefits to being on the platform. I would so much rather see somebody post twice a week, but do it every single week. Because the way to really build an audience, build a following, build a community on LinkedIn is to be consistent. It is really all about consistency. And so whatever that looks like, right? So I post 5 to 6 days a week because I enjoy it and it's my business now, right? So it makes sense to me that I'm there so much. But for someone else, that might be once a week. And that's fine. If that is suiting your needs and that is accomplishing the things that you want to accomplish, just by posting once a week, you're already in something like the top 2 to 3% of all the people on LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn has 1 billion users, but so few of them post content on a consistent basis. So I always tell people the playing field is still wide open. There is still so much opportunity to have a presence there, but you have to be consistent.
How has your definition of joy evolved through your personal and professional journey over the years?
Oh, that is a wonderful question. I think the biggest shift for me is I don't care so much what other people think. And that in itself is joyful, right? How much time, energy, and emotional effort do we waste worrying what someone else thinks? And so I guess I would say two things. One, people are not paying as much attention to us as we think they are. Right? I read this thing, I think it's called the spotlight effect, right?
Yes.
We're aware of some flaw in ourselves and we think everyone is staring at that flaw. And in reality, no one notices because they're all worried about themselves and they're all thinking about their own flaws and their own problems. They're not focused on us. So that's one thing. And the other thing is at the end of the day, who cares? Right? So I was a brand vice president at a very prestigious company and I was very proud of that. And when I lost that title, it was hard for me to talk about my career, right? Because I was like, well, what are people going to think? What are people going to think that, oh, I'm consulting now? Who cares? If somebody has a problem with that, that says a lot about them and it says nothing about me, right? Because I'm doing something that brings me joy. I'm bringing something that I feel adds value. And if somebody is going to look at that a little funny or think it's not as prestigious as what I was doing before, that's on them. It's not on me. And that has been so mentally and emotionally freeing and definitely joy inducing.
I love that. So, actually, can you share with our audience more details about your consulting services and how they can learn more about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I went really all in on personal branding and LinkedIn. So I am a personal brands and LinkedIn strategist. And there's actually two ways that I work with people. So I work with people one on one. And then I also have, with a business partner, a monthly membership community, which is focused around thought leadership, personal brand, content creation, growing a business, launching a consultancy, starting that side hustle, or growing that side hustle. And how they can find out more about me, well, definitely on LinkedIn, right? You can always connect with me on LinkedIn. And then there's websites, obviously, for both of those. So for my personal work, it is my name. It's melissabethcohen.com. And for the community, it's called DIY Influence. And so that's DIYinfluence.com. And I love, they're both different ways of working with people, but they're both really fulfilling to me in different ways. And uh, honestly, I'm so blessed to be doing this, to do things that bring me joy.
And actually, talking about joy, if there would be a recipe for joy, what would be the three main ingredients in your view?
Oh, wow. Family, friends, coffee. Not kidding.
And especially enjoying coffee with friends or family, right?
Absolutely. 100%. Bring all three together. It is the perfect mix. In all seriousness, I start every day the same way. Coffee and LinkedIn. Coffee is a joy bringer for me. 100%. And I think about how do we even use the term today, right? When I have a Zoom call with someone, it's a virtual coffee, right? And I'll say, "Hey, let's meet up and let's have coffee." Right? Coffee is a very social beverage and it's caffeinating. So for me, that's even more joyful.
Fantastic. And outside of your professional pursuits, what brings you the most joy? I know you've touched upon friends and family, and you're also involved in some philanthropic causes that relate to the young leaders of the future. Can you tell us more about that, please?
Oh my gosh, with pleasure. So I am part of an organization called Her Move Next, and it's a 501c3 organization, and we are dedicated to empowering girls and young women through chess, community, and competition. My daughter was a scholastic chess player, and so I saw firsthand chess is a beautiful game and it brings so much to the people who play it. And I think it's especially important for girls. In any scholastic chess tournament, I would say the average is about 75% boys, 25% girls. And that only gets worse when you get to adult tournaments, right? Because girls over time will just tend to drop out. And chess teaches so many beautiful skills. It teaches focus, it teaches concentration, it teaches strategic thinking, it teaches good sportsmanship. And so anytime I can get young people and especially girls involved in the game, I am super happy. And we do a monthly online tournament. It's completely free of charge every month on Zoom. And we get players from around the country. We also get a lot of players from Africa. We have a lot of players from Kenya, from Nigeria. And sometimes it's 1 or 2 in the morning for these girls when the tournament ends, but they come because they love to see this group of friends, this group of girls who want to play chess, want to get better, want to learn from one another. All of our coaches are high school and college age girls. And then as part of the tournament every month, we have a motivational female guest speaker. And we get speakers, sometimes they're from the chess world. We've had some very well known chess players, but we've also just had business leaders. We've had women from the United Nations. We've had women who have written books. And they're just our goal is to show girls that they can be anything that they want to be, that there are so many career options and opportunities out there for them. And so it's a beautiful organization, and I love being part of it. So thank you for asking.
I love that. And thank you so much for sharing that the inspiration actually behind your involvement with this foundation that is actually emerging from your experience with your daughter and her passion for chess, which I just find so beautiful. I was wondering if maybe you could share with us the key insights you have learned as a parent, and specifically as we guide our children, whether it's boys or girls, in pursuing a passion and a career path or an educational journey that can allow them to become beautiful contributors to our society while also experiencing joy for themselves.
I was talking about this with a friend of mine today. I think there's so much pressure on kids to have it all figured out, and they're kids, right? When our children go to college, they're 17, 18, 19 years old. I think about who I was when I was that age versus who I am today. And to expect our kids to have everything all figured out at such a young age, I think is really a mistake. And so let them explore different majors, let them explore different classes. I think this pressure to declare a major in like your first year of college is really a mistake. And so I'm grateful that most schools don't require that, but some of them do. And I think that that can be really hard. And I would say there always has to be a balance between the financial reward and the personal reward, right? And I think a lot of us can tend to want to guide our children towards things that are financially rewarding. And I get that, right? Because we want them to have the things in life that are going to make them happy. We want them to be able to afford their own home, their own car, whatever these things might be. But I've also seen too many young people burn out, right? And go into these high pressure cooker kind of careers because that's where the money is. They're very unhappy. And so I would say really trying to balance those two sides of the coin. And I would also really encourage, I was having this conversation with someone recently too, really encourage our children to embrace in-person networking, in-person events, any kind of social event, whether it's at school or, a friend group. This is the first generation that was born digitally native. And I see it with a lot of these kids. They don't even pick up the phone. They don't have phone conversations. Everything's over text. And there's this awkwardness around meeting in person. And I think that's such a missed opportunity. I think the pandemic really impacted our kids a lot, and really encouraging them to embrace real human to human relationships is probably one of the most important gifts we can give them.
How beautifully said, Melissa. I love that. And since you spoke about identity before, how can we help our kids build a solid identity of who they are that is not necessarily defined by their job, as we discussed?
I mean, I think you nailed it, right? We are more than our jobs. And so, really encouraging them to pursue other interests, right? Maybe it's chess, maybe it's reading, maybe it's painting. I would also say, really encouraging our kids to travel as much as you can, right? If you can bring your children to another country and have them experience a different culture, I think is one of the biggest gifts we can give them, right? I didn't travel a lot as a kid. The first time I was on an airplane in my life was for my grandfather's funeral. And the second time I was on a plane in my life was to study abroad in Italy for the summer. And that's kind of weird, right? To have only been on a plane once before going to study abroad. That experience was life changing for me. Getting to be immersed in a different culture where people spoke a different language and had a very different lifestyle, right? Italians have a very different lifestyle than New Yorkers. They have it right. I mean, I had the most amazing time there, and Italy is still one of my favorite places. And, for work, I was very fortunate that I got to travel a ton. I traveled to Hong Kong and India 4 times a year, like clockwork. And so I got to really experience all of these different people and cultures and foods and languages. And the more we can expose our kids to that, I think the better.
Beautiful. And talking about travel like you, I find there's so much richness in those experiences that allow us to better understand others from all over the world in terms of their cultures, their religions. And there's a sense of excitement whenever I travel. And I've traveled in over 50 countries, and it's just like so positive and so joyful for me. I was curious to learn your view on what you have learned about the universality of joy as you've traveled in all these different parts of the world.
Joy is universal, right? We all want joy. And kind of piggybacking on your last question, I think we all want joy and better for our children, right? And I think that's what really brings people together, right? We all want, at the end of the day, a better world for our children. We want our children to have a better life, a more joyful life than when we started, right? We want to leave the world a better place. And I've found that to be true everywhere that I've gone. I definitely haven't been to 50 countries. I'm going to count now. You've really intrigued me. I'm going to see how many countries I've been to. But, I've been to Europe, I've been to Asia, I've been to South and Central America. And those concepts are universal, right? Everybody wants the best for their children. And I think that is just a beautiful motivator, and that's what's ultimately gonna save the world, right? We all want something better for our kids.
If you could leave our listeners with one piece of advice about finding joy in their careers and lives, what would it be?
Don't underestimate the power of small joys, right? I think sometimes we are waiting for this big, gigantic, joyful moment, and they're wonderful, right? A wedding, a big vacation, a big promotion at work. Those are fantastic and they should be celebrated. And you know what else should be celebrated? A fantastic cup of coffee, the best dessert you've ever had, getting to see a friend that you haven't seen in a while. So I live in New York City, right? Seeing a really good show. These are all small things that can bring us joy and happiness. And when you add all those little small joys up over time, I think they're every bit as important as those big giant ones. And we can celebrate them every single day. So that would be my biggest piece of advice. Just look for those small joys.
I love that. And on these beautiful words, Melissa, I want to say thank you for sharing your wisdom, sharing your experience. It's been an immense joy for me.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure and joy for me as well. Thank you for having me.